Well, I want to thank everybody for coming here. I know a lot of you. And I know a lot of you are here because of Joe. I'll stand there for you, Joe. I've known Joe Dillard for many, many years, as most of you have. And I currently serve with him on city council because he's our mayor, and he's been mayor a couple times, and he's going to talk to you a little bit about his history. But, you know, when you think of a politician, which I don't think Joe thinks himself as a politician, the word honest politician is not usually used together, you know. But for Joe, you can say that. Joe's one of the most honest people I have ever met. If he says it, he'll do it. He has integrity, he has honesty, he's just a really good person. And you know, in today's political world, that's a really rare quality. And it's really hard to find. I have never found anybody that said anything negative about you, Joe. Everybody loves you. So I'm honored to serve with him on city council, and I'm really honored that he's here tonight to speak with you all. So here's Joe Dillard.
Thank you very much, Jennifer. You've elevated me where I don't need to be with those nice remarks, but thank you. Thank you for the invitation to come and to visit. It's a great honor. And with me tonight is quite a few of my family, my wife. We just celebrated 56 years last Friday, and we're working on 57. But our daughter's here, and grandsons, and older grandson's wife, Hannah, and my brother and his wife, but lots of friends, lots of people that I've known and grown up with, and been around for a long time. So I want to say a thank you back to my family. In elections, and it's very important that you have family support. You can't make an election successful very often without support, and my wife has been a great supporter. So has my whole family. But tonight, I want to just kind of walk through the last roughly 40 years. My first venture, I guess, was, well, backing up just a little bit, seeing the slides down at Rush, I was actually born over here in Baxter County, down at Cassville. Dr. Guthner was my mother's doctor, and but we was raised out south of Yubble, out near Buffalo River. And I've been in the old Rush town back when it was not a national river property. I remember the old post office. Lee Medley was the postmaster, and I never seen a house that reflected anything close to what we've seen on the screen, but those houses down there were, you know, most of them sawn out of sawmill lumber, and just houses, but good people, and used to be a very thriving place. But we moved to Mountain Home in 1970. In the late 70s, I ran for school board. The reason I did, I had two good reasons. I had a young son and a young daughter, and I felt like needed to contribute, if I could, to the school board. And when I named some of the school board members that was on there, it may raise some eyebrows. You wonder how we ever got anything done, probably. But there was Dr. Kerr, there was Bob Hackler, Calvin Shasheen, Leighton Bowman, Esther Demerit, and myself, and a couple more, and I couldn't recall all the names there, but it was, I guess one of the interesting things that came up was during that time, the Gamaliel had already moved their 6th through the 12th grade over to Mountain Home. Well, they were wanting to move the K through 5 over, and I was wanting to wait till the bridges got complete so that we didn't put those kids on the bus before daylight and get them home after dark. I rode a bus for 14 miles each way for 12 years, so I know a little bit about riding through the dust and the mud. But the ferry boat, as y'all know, if you got there at the right time, you was okay. If you got there at the wrong time, you sat there for quite a while. So, but anyway, when the vote came down, it was 7-1. I took Esther to Mary over and thought she was gonna vote with me on it, but it was a 7-1 vote, but that's just the way it goes. But, you know, I've been there. I guess one of the things that come up in the school system at that time was, it was the beginning of sex education in schools. And it was some different implementing new things, and it was different. But that's back when, you know, that's back when it happened, when it began. In 1979, I announced for county judge, and that when I had no intent of actually getting into politics, but kind of one thing I guess led to another, and anyway, I announced, and Judge Baker was on his 20th year, and I'd heard that he was going to retire, but he hadn't made that announcement. Anyway, I announced in November, and in January he announced that he was not going to run. And when that happened, then there was 3 more. I ran as a Democrat, and there was 3 more guys got in the race as Democrats, and that was Merle Chipman, Lloyd Satterfield, Mayor Rex Bayless, and myself. Well, it got into a runoff, and with Mayor Bayless and I, and we did okay and won that election. And then in November, we had 2 independents and a Republican, and so there was 7 in that race. And thanks to the voters that got out and worked on my behalf, it worked out. I guess looking back at the while I was in the judge's office, some things kind of come to pop out in my mind, and one was the flood. It was in 81 or 82. Anyway, it's when Norfolk Village and Porterfield, it cut the road between them, and a lot of 17 families actually trapped down at Porterfield in Gene Porter's house. And some rough times. Sheriff Joe Edmonds and one of the deputies, and I don't recall which one it was, but they actually went in, and there was one man died there from a heart attack. They went in and brought the body out, and but it was rough times. One thing too, and some of you know about it, but some of you may not know. In '82, we actually leased a hospital. But while I was campaigning in '80, a lot of people asked me, said, "What are you going to do with the hospital?" And my answer to them, I have no clue. You know as much about it as I know about it, but we will look at it. Well, Bud Boltenhammer, Hal Boltenhammer, was the chair of the hospital board, and back then, you know, before we leased it, the county judge each year made a political appointment to the hospital board. It's a 7-member board. I had to appoint one in '81 and early in '82 before we had the votes to do what we did with it. But we leased the hospital, and it was a 30-year lease for $600,000 a year that went back into the general fund. Now that sounds like a lot of money coming out of the hospital, but the hospital was 100% for doing this. Their board and the doctors, and a lot of that money was Medicare money that was coming from the government through the hospital back to help pay the lease, and that was strictly legal. Gordon Webb worked with us. Mr. Boltenhammer appointed 2 members from himself and 2. I appointed 3, Gene Porter and Ramsey Cotter and Dixie Badley. Now I got to tell you, the makeup of the court back then, in 1981 and '82, there was 9 members on the court, and there was 7 Democrats and 2 Republicans. Well, knowing that this might be a risky thing that we was doing, wasn't sure it was going to work. So I appointed Ramsey Cotter and Dixie Badley, the 2 Republicans, and Gene Porter on that committee. I felt like if we was going to go down, I was going to have some people out on that limb with me if it got sawed off. But it worked. It worked good. And if you remember back in 2012, the Foreign Court was talking about how they were going to replace that $600,000 a year. Some of them I don't think even knew where it come from, probably because it'd been 30 years before. But that was the end of the hospital money. Then there's another 50 years, actually now from about 45 years left, at $10 a year that the hospital will pay to the county. Now that was an 80-year contract, 80-year marriage, where the board, hospital board, could not sell the hospital, they could not give it away, they could not take any gain from it. All the money was put back into brick and mortar, into equipment and personnel. So it's worked good, we've grown, we've outgrown. Back when we was doing this, Harrison was the bigger hospital. I think we had 65 beds at that time. Now well, y'all know what we have up here. It's a great hospital, 108 doctors on staff, and it's good. We worked hard to pass a county sales tax. We were hurting for money, and it took three tries to pass it. We kept, if you hear now about the county, about the millage, it's a 1 meal or less than 1 meal, and the Corn Court can set from 0 meals up to 5 meals, and that reflects on our taxes. Well, we kept giving up millage in lieu of getting a sales tax passed because we wanted to pass part of that expense onto the people visiting here and take the millage expense off of the people who actually lived here. But it worked after the third time, and right now that is the county's biggest source of revenue. It generates a lot of money, but that is why that millage is very low. We also participated in the first veterans bus, and I thought this was a pretty big deal. The county put in $4,500, and the veterans raised $4,500 locally, and that matched the first veteran bus that goes to Little Rock to carry our veterans down for their services. We appropriated money back then. It wasn't much money, but some people loved it and some didn't like it, but we always appropriated $1,000 for the 4-H club. We appropriated $1,000 for the Children's Hospital and $1,000 for Wolf House. And that was just something that we did every year, and we took some heat over it. But the other thing is the college back then, when I was judge, we worked with Dr. Bill Baker. He was the head of the North Arkansas College out of Harrison, and we worked with him before Arkansas State ever come on the scene here. We've got a great college now, but the Quorum Court actually appropriated money to pay the rent in a schoolhouse for classrooms. And then we worked out and we got the Baptist Church property, the 4 blocks. We got 2 blocks of that. The county put in 150, the city put in 150, and then Calvin Shasheen headed up a committee that raised the remainder to buy those 2 blocks. Then the other 2 blocks was bought by the governor and his people with, the governor came up, Governor Clinton, and actually looked at it. It was pretty much a done deal, but they bought it, kept it a little while, and then they were going to use it for VOTEC, but it never did really work out. And so they deeded it back to the county, and that's how the county come up with 4 blocks of property there just east of the courthouse. One other thing that happened during that time, Judge Taylor called me from Marshall. He was the county judge over in Searcy County. He said, and this is when Governor Clinton was governor, he said, would you like to spend some time with the governor? I said, well, I'm always like to visit with the governor. He said, well, I tell you what, the governor's flying into Clinton, 30 miles, south of Marshall. He said, I'm going to take a van down there to get him, and then you come over here and go with me, and we'll have him for 30 minutes, 30 miles in the back of that van with no interruptions. I said, okay. We did, and we had we had a good visit. I always felt like that when I was talking to Governor Clinton, that for about 20 to 30 seconds I had his full attention. And then I felt like his mind, he was still paying attention, but I felt like his mind was somewhere else. But he couldn't walk away from us, he couldn't get away, so we had him in the back of that van. In 19 and, well, I ran for, in 19, I believe it was 89 and 91, Mr. Cohee ran against me in the first race. He got within two, I carried all the boxes, but he got within 2 votes of me over in Indian Creek. We live in the old part of Indian Creek now. But I told my wife, I said, well, if he runs again, I'll go door to door. A judge don't do much for the city people because the city does the streets and all the city services. Anyway, he ran again, and I went over and I knocked every door in Indian Creek. That two vote margin, I turned it into 386 votes. I beat him 386 votes. And the same thing 2 years later. Now this demonstrates what knocking doors, looking people in the face, and Mr. Flippo was here, and I'm not saying that to him or anybody, but it worked back then. It worked for me. It worked for Ed Gilbert when shoe leather and just talking to people, answering their questions. And so I served. I was on my 7th term, and I got appointed in July of '93 to Governor Jim Guy Tucker appointed me to head up the State Office of Emergency Service. This is a fairly small agency. It was located in Conway. It had about 50 people in it. And when Governor Clinton was elected president, he took James Lee Witt to head up FEMA. And James Lee Witt, this was his old job. He was the state director at that time, so I actually got his old job. There was a lot of people after it, and I felt very fortunate to get the appointment, but Governor Tucker actually came to Mountain Home on the courthouse steps and made the announcement, and it was an interesting time. We spent over 4 years, actually moved to Conway, bought a house there and lived in Conway, and a lot of things happened during that time. My job description required me to be in every county at least a couple times a year. And when disasters was going on, we lived in some of those counties nearly. It was, I guess, one of the biggest events was in '97. We had actually 42 counties under presidential declaration. That's the highest declaration that you can declare. The county judge will declare at the county level, then the governor declares at the state level, and then the governor asks the president for help from FEMA or the federal level. So we had 42 counties. It was tornadoes that hit in the southwest corner of Arkansas and just cut right straight across the state and exited up in the northeast corner of Arkansas. Then after that happened, major flooding set in. And so that's for that many counties. Well, the legislature was in session, and Governor Huckabee had not been in office too long, and the state had about $22 million, and the legislature, basically being Democrat back then, really didn't want Governor Huckabee to spend that $22 million. So what they did, we helped them with it, but they appropriated $500,000, $500,000 for each of those 42 counties that were in presidential declaration, 21 million. That happened in the late part of the session. It had to be processed and used by July 1. Well, we were the clearinghouse for it, so I had to sign off on it. Baxter County, that's where the early warning system come from. Judge Botenhammer selected to use his money for the sirens, the early warning system. But one thing, when I got to OES after the appointment, the first day I got there, I drove up, and the facility's actually underground. It's a really nice facility, but it was set up where in the Cold War, where if Little Rock should have been attacked or for any reason, the governor and the state constitutional officer, they could come there and actually run the state government and be protected because it was all underground. I drove up, and this little gal came out, and I didn't know who she was, and she handed me a note, and it just said, "Welcome from the little people." And that got my attention. but the more I thought about it, we had got all the people in a couple days later, our first staff meeting. And I told them, I didn't say anything about the note, but I told them, I said, as long as I'm here, we're all equal. There's no little people, there's no big people. Everybody's got a job to do. It's important. You have an important job or you wouldn't be here. And from that day on, we didn't hear any more about little people or big people, but, and you know, and I believe that. We're all there as a team. And that meant myself or whoever, all the way up and down the line. But the first disaster that I was called out on, this was a little embarrassing. Now most of you know probably I fish and hunt, but that was in November, and Mena, over in the western part of the state, had been hit by a tornado. Well, I and one of our people out of OES and a friend from up here was down in White River Refuge hunting. And the cell phones didn't work down there. It was too low down. And we could tell, you know, it looked like a tornado weather. Anyway, finally come out and made a phone call. They said, well, we've been trying to get a hold of you for over a day. Said, the governor's looking for you. He wants you to go with him to Mena. I thought, oh my goodness, you know. Well, Governor Tucker was good. And I remember when we got in the vehicle and started doing the tour of the disaster over in Mena, he told the judge over there, he said, we've been here a long time ago if I could have got Dillard out of the deer woods. Now that was my first disaster, and you know, I didn't know how that was going to play out, but it worked out, and but tornado hit Fort Smith and Van Buren, and it was a bad one. Several people got killed, and we were over there for weeks and weeks, and FEMA was in, and after it was over, FEMA had really worked hard, and sometimes they get they get bad things said about them, this and that, but those people were good people, and they done what they could. And I told our group, I said, before these FEMA people leave, we need to have fry them some chicken. We're over in chicken country, and I told one of my area coordinators, I said, your job is to go get, I forget, but chicken. Well, he went, and of course, he come back with all the chicken you could think about. We've got our big deep fryers, and we did a one-day deal over there for FEMA. They said they'd never been treated like that. And, you know, but they had worked hard. They'd been away from their homes. They'd been living in motels, and so we put just a little bit of spirit in it and tried to make them feel good. Well, in '97, late '97, there was a Mayor Howell, Carol Howell was mayor in Mountain Home, and she actually left during midterm, and there was a special election held, and I ran for it, and two other friends ran for it, and it worked out that we were elected, and so I started serving as mayor in September 26th, I believe, in '97. During that time, and I served until December of '02, and I didn't run after that for mayor, but during that time we were actually lucky enough that we put school resource officers in place, and actually all three of those resource officers that we installed back then are still working as resource officers today. They're part of our police department. We were able to redo the downtown area, and some of you wasn't here then, but it was not handicap accessible. Over in front of the old time restaurant, there was 2 step ups. Now it's handicap accessible. Our street department went in and completely redid the square. They put in new sidewalks, actually made it kind of colorful, and put some added attractions to it. Put in the new light system all around the square. And then we tore down, and I may be talking to a group that don't like to see old buildings tore down, but we tore down the west side of the square, had 7 buildings on it, and most of them were in bad shape. Well, then we built the plaza, and our street department tore those buildings down. We called on the street department to do a lot of work, and they've stepped up to the plate. Mr. Tilley is retiring a week from tomorrow. We had a deal for him today, and but he's been good. He's been real good. But we worked with the veterans to build a veterans wall at the backside of the plaza, and the plaza now is where they have quite a few events as far as any veterans events. The private sector stepped up and had some major statues of soldiers made, and everybody got involved in it, and it turned out really good. But it was interesting. We had, of course, ran into asbestos when on those 7 buildings, and we wanted to go in, but we couldn't, and we had to spend about $18,000, which we were probably lucky to get by that cheap, but to asbestos abatement. We were able to build 2 water towers during that tenure, big towers, and we bought a line from Cotter, a big line, a water line coming into Mountain Home from Cotter. I think it's 16 or 18 inch line. We got an ISO rating down to 3, and that's about as low as we can go in a small town without adding a lot more resources. So, but that lowered the insurance rating for not only the business community but for the individuals living in Mountain Home. But it was interesting. It was an interesting time, and my feeling has always been the city's responsibility or the county responsibility is to make sure that we've got resources for new businesses, for developments, anything that can bring in, create jobs, bring in new businesses. We need to make sure we've got plenty of water. We need to make sure we've got sewer, good streets to drive on, good fire protection, and good police protection. And then you add the parks to it. Those first 5 are essential services. Water and sewer, streets, police, and fire. Parks is not an essential service. But anyway, we had the resources, and I feel like that's where a lot of city money has been spent preparing for the future. Now, if you look at Baxter County, we were lucky, and we've got pretty much a good highway on 62-412. Thanks to a lot of effort back with Senators Veda Shedd and Bobby Hopper was on the highway. Bobby was raised here in Baxter County. So it was timing at the right time in order to get that done. Today, and y'all can help on this, but there's an effort being made to fill the gaps on 412. If you go east here or if you go west, you run out of the good roads, and we need passing lanes, we need good roads in order to get people in here, to get our industries where they come and go and get their product in and out, and it'd just be a lot safer, a lot better on our vehicles. So there's an effort underway, and I certainly support that, and I think if at the federal level, if there's infrastructure money comes down, this group is positioning us to be in line to hopefully get some of that infrastructure money. One thing I didn't say when I was judge, and I know the sheriff is not here, but we used to, the meals for the prisoners. Well, we had a nursing home, and we set it up where the nursing home would furnish the food for the prisoners. We kept it in-house. There's a county nursing home and county jail. So Pat Flippo was the administrator there and worked well with us, and that's Senator Flippo's father. He ran our and he ran it like it was his own parents in there. He took good care of the people. But I thought that was pretty interesting that we could, because they had a dietitian at the nursing home, and they got good meals, but it went from one county thing back into another county account. After being mayor, I started working for Congressman Marion Berry in April of '03, and I worked for him until December of 2010. He retired at that time, but he put a congressional office in the courthouse here on the second floor of the courthouse, and I ran that office for him, and had 8 counties, and had, of course, had Baxter, but had Searcy County, and Stone County, Mountain View, Cleveland County, Heber, Batesville, Salem, Ash Flat, Izard County. There was 8 counties. And during that time, we had, that's when the ice storm hit, I think in '09. And it was pretty much all over his district. It wasn't just an isolated event. If it's an isolated event, you can pull all your resources in it and get help from a lot of places. But when it's spread out, then you don't have help from a lot of places. So a lot of people were kind of on their own during that time and having to do things that we hadn't seen before. But the ice storm was big, and I worked, supposed to work 30 hours a week for the congressman, but during events like that, well, I didn't even keep up with my time because I was getting paid for 30 hours. And the good thing about it, when hunting season come, you know, the chief of staff said, go hunt. So I didn't mind working during those times, but I needed to work. Those people needed, the mayors and judges and school people. It was a challenging time to get resources in from the federal government. The congressman at that time was instrumental in getting minimum flow. If we got trout fishermen in the room or environmentalists, he helped get that in. He helped get the big water project at Diamond City, which doesn't affect us, but it affects 4 counties and actually 22 different entities use that water, including the town of Marshall and a lot of rural water departments. If someone come into the office when I was there, I didn't do any casework, but I would take their information. And we had a lot of veteran issues. We had a lot of Social Security and Social Security disability issues. But I could take that information, fax it over to, he had caseworkers in Cabot and in Jonesboro. And within 30 minutes or so, we could have that information over where they could actually start to work on it. Now, they wasn't sitting there waiting. Sometimes it you know, unless it was a priority or something was really a rush, but they could get on it quicker. But we was able to help a lot of people with issues, and he had one lady that was really good with work with the people that passports, and they'd get hung up somewhere and had to have political help to maybe move them, but he was good to do those things. Also during that time, Gasville tornado hit, and that was a bad situation. And I was in a meeting today, and Tony Flippin, and some of you know Tony, but he said he was trying to get water or something at night, and he said he seen a big caravan coming of lights, and he thought it was the National Guard. Well, it was the City of Mountain Home Street Department. Now, I wasn't mayor and not taking any credit for it, but Eamon Tilley and the street department was down there to help at night to help Gasville, and they stayed and helped them all the way through, helped them with their documentation, FEMA documentation. Mountain View had a bad tornado, and I get a call over there nearly every day from the mayor. Jim Cash was the mayor in Mountain View at that time, and he was gun shy about anything going on that he, you know, but a lot going on, and it was an interesting time. Then I took a little vacation and ran for, was actually appointed by Governor Beebe to fill in a spot on the Quorum Court, and then in 13 and 14 I was on the city council. Excuse me. But I've had three governor appointments from 3 governors: Governor Tucker, Governor Huckabee, and Governor Beebe. And it's been an honor to serve, as they asked me to serve, and, but there's politics in everything, and Jennifer, you're right, I don't consider myself a politician, and I never have. I just feel like, you know, I've never asked anybody for $1 on any of my races. I just never asked. I've always had money given to me, but as far as going out, and there was one time, the second time that Mr. Kobe ran me, there was a group that called themselves Independents for Dillard. And it was basically Republicans camouflaged as independents because I was running it. I was a Democrat running against a Republican. There was some Democrats on it and maybe a couple, but they did my fundraising for me. They set up a deal. I had Senator Pryor come in and kick that campaign off at the Ramada Inn in the big area, and it was standing room only. But they set it up. They ordered the menu. They paid for it. At the fairground, instead of renting a booth, they built one and set it right inside the gate. And they kept someone there every hour that the fair was open on my behalf. I could never repay them enough. I mean, you know, that's something money couldn't buy. But they did it, and I very much appreciated it, and we won the election without any problem. But Senator Pryor, that night at Ramada, he said, "What is this independence stuff?" He said, "I've never seen it before." I said, "Well, I've just got lucky, and this group they call themselves Independents for Dillard," and I told him what they're doing. He said, "I've never seen anything like it." And that was coming from Senator Pryor. And but anyway, since I've been mayor this last time, we've been working, and there was actually 3 of us ran, and I was the lucky one again. But we have inherited a really nice piece of property called it's McCabe Park, and a lot of you know where it's at. It's behind the old McCabe house place across from New Hart's building, and it's 42 acres. And we're in the process of developing it. We're having to go slow, but it's got 3 lakes and it's spring fed. We worked it out with Game and Fish and to help us stock the lake. We want more help from them. We're still working to get more because a lot of people fish out there. And it's close, it's handy, it's open. I talked to a lady out there one day. We was out there looking at something, and she said, "You know, this is the only place I can come and feel comfortable by myself. It's so open out here. We're right here in town. I feel comfortable." And she said, "I'll be back tomorrow." Now, I don't know, you know, we had a fishing derby there, and we had our council people. Mr. Graves is here, and he worked he's on the Parks Committee, but we had 143 kids that registered to fish that day. And then you had that many parents and grandparents combined. So we fed them hot dogs. They had all the cold drinks that they could eat. They had we had caps and prizes for them, and they could catch a 3 fish limit. And that's the limit now. The council actually set a limit out there. It's 3 fish, and you can take 3 fish out, or you can go and fish and catch and release, or however you want to do it. But the reason the council said it, our city police can enforce that. If we kept it a game and fish regulations, only game and fish could enforce it. But now our city police, the sheriff's office, state police, anybody can enforce that along with game and fish. But we got a great opportunity out there. We just got a pavilion donated to us, the Fly Fishers, North Arkansas Fly Fishers, about $17,000 pavilion. And it's in place. It's overlooking the lake, and we're growing it. We're having to grow it as we can. We just don't have money to go out and develop it. But I guess one of the things I want to talk about too, we got a new radio system for the entire city. Our fire and police was using an outdated system. This is a new digital system, and it's state of the art. And it's working well. Not only, but also the other departments, and they've got brand new tower equipment on the tower. So we're proud of that. I just wanted to kind of close here by talking about some of the things that's fixing to happen. Very soon, in fact, it starts June the 5th, but we have it's called the IRT, it's Innovative Readiness Training put on by the military. It's going to be over at the junior high on Rodeo Drive. And the military is coming in and setting up, and they're going to do a medical clinic, and it's free to anybody and everybody. And you don't have to live in Baxter County or Mountain Home to participate. So if you've got friends that need medical services, they're also going to have dental, and they'll be making eyeglasses for people doing eye exams and making glasses. No cost to any of this. And it will be from it'll be on Monday the 5th through that Saturday from 8 till 5 every day. On Sunday it'll be from 12 to 4. Then the following Monday it'll be 8 to 5, and then on Tuesday that'll be their last day, and it'll be from 8 till 12, and then they'll start packing up. But these are doctors or physicians, full time, but they have to do their training. Just like our National Guard here has to leave sometimes to go on training in 2 or 3 weeks. Well, this is doctors coming from up in the Northeast coming here to do their training. They're not new doctors, they're not here to practice on us, but they're here to serve the medical needs of our community. Also, in August, we're having the first World Series that's ever come to Mountain Home. This will be 13-year-old World Series. It'll be held at a new field over on West Road, McLean Park, and we're looking forward to that. That's a brand new. We've hosted state tournaments, we've hosted regional tournaments, but never hosted a state tournament before. So this is we're plowing new ground here. We took back the Mountain Home Cemetery. It'll be 2 years on up in the summer, and we got members here from the cemetery board. But we're trying to make that cemetery as nice as we possibly can. Clean it up. We're getting new fence around. We've had a donor that really stepped up to the plate and they bought a new fence for us, and it's being installed. A new chain link fence, heavy duty. We've got a new sign. We're going to put lights and a flagpole, and the cemetery never had been really secured, or you didn't really know where some of the boundaries was. So, but I compliment the board and thanks to the people that step up and help us. One thing, I'm seeing right now more housing starting in Mountain Home than I have in years and years and years. And I think this is a very positive sign. I think that's a good way to measure or say that our economy is starting to come back, is starting to improve, and there's a lot going on. I just want you all to know, and I'm going to open it up for questions if we've got time for a couple of questions, but it's a great honor to serve as mayor, and it's good time in Mountain Home to serve as mayor. Because look at what we have to offer here. Not what I've done, but look at we're sitting here between 2 lakes, 2 beautiful lakes, 3 rivers. Look at our retirement community and the tourism that we get in here. You know, Arkansas has 500 cities, and some of them are not very big. But you know what? I don't think you can find another city that's set up like Mountain Home. I really don't. And sometimes we take it for granted, and we shouldn't. We should appreciate every day what we've got here. Look at our hospital. Look at our college, ASU Mountain Home, our schools. I'm talking about, I think, 8 different schools in our city. Low crime area. But you know what really makes our community? It's our volunteers. The people that volunteer is what makes our community great. And we've got an outstanding group of volunteers, and that's where the credit goes. People that serve on boards, they don't get paid to serve on these boards. They spend their time, their money coming and going, and you know, it's but we are a great volunteer community, and it couldn't work well without it. It really couldn't. So I know a lot of volunteers in this room, and thank you all for what you do. I would open it up for question, if you have one. If I hadn't put you to sleep, yes, ma'am.
I just wondered, what year did they sell the county nursing home? I used to work there when it was Baxter Manor.
Yes, it was, I'm not 100% sure. The hospital was leased and the nursing home was still going. And then the hospital board is the one that actually, it was under their board. It would have been, Scott, do you remember what?
Yes, sir.
What year?
It's about 2000, 2001.
About
When
2000?
they sold,
Yeah.
yes, sir.
And was it because there was so many other nursing homes popping up, or they just didn't want to deal with that?
Well, like I say, the hospital board was the board actually, and then I think after the hospital, we formed a nursing home board. After the hospital was leased, that board, during that lease, and even now, the county has to stay at arm's length from that lease. They don't want anybody messing with it, or interfering with it. So I don't know really the reason. In 2000, I was mayor back then, but I don't know. I know we have a lot of other nursing homes, and I don't know, looking at it from from the money side, if it was, you know, I just don't know. But it's now rehab, you know, and it got a good rehab center there, so. But it served its purpose, it really did, and thank you for working there. That was a,
From 90 to 93.
yeah, that was a,
But what a difference, now everything is rubber gloves and
yeah.
none of that. We just did everything.
Well, things have changed, I
Yes.
tell you, big time. Any other questions?
Joe, I just got something to say about our hospital over here. We are really fortunate to have good doctors here and everything else. I've had a hip replaced over there, and I'm recovering from open heart surgery, and our doctors over here are very caring people and everything else. And if you ever have any problems, use our doctors here, because they are great.
Okay, thank you for your comment, Mr. Whalen.
Yes, Mayor, it's rumored that by late summer, you're going to name the individual who's going to head your re-election campaign.
Is that a political question? Well, late summer is not here yet, Mr. Whalen, and you know, I will not respond to that at this time. But in late summer, I will respond to it. Okay? Is that fair? Okay.
I don't believe it.
Any other questions? Well, thank you so much for the invite to come and to be a part of your evening. And if you think of something later, well, if I may not know the answer, I didn't know the answer to your question. Senator Flippo answered it for us, but if we don't know, we'll try to find out.
I just need to say one thing. I'm just so wonderful that you've dedicated your life to making a mountain home in Baxter County better. And I had a friend of mine who had moved to Oklahoma to be close to her relatives, and she stayed 2 years, came back, and she said, there is nothing there in Oklahoma. There is no senior center. There's just nothing. They don't have the parks. They don't have the facilities we've got here, and she's never leaving.
We're glad to have her back. Thank you all very much.